The air was thick with humidity on that July evening in New Orleans, the kind that makes your clothes stick to your skin and your hair curl at the edges. The French Quarter was alive with its usual symphony of jazz music and tourist chatter, but 3 miles away, in a quiet neighborhood off St. Claude Avenue, a different kind of drama was unfolding. Sarah Mitchell stood in front of her bathroom mirror, her hands trembling as she read the text message again. He's been lying to both of us. Meet me at Café Beignet tomorrow at 2. You deserve to know the truth. At 35, Sarah had spent the last 12 years building what she thought was a perfect life with Marcus Mitchell. Their 2-story craftsman house in the Bywater neighborhood was the envy of their friends. Their Facebook photos showed a couple who seemed to have it all. Matching smiles at Saints games, romantic anniversaries in the French Quarter, family barbecues in their perfectly manicured backyard. But over the past 6 months, something had changed. Marcus, a successful real estate agent with Keller Williams, had been working later and later. His excuses were always the same. Big client, baby. House showing ran late. Traffic on I-10 was terrible. Sarah, who taught 3rd grade at Martin Behrman Charter School, had noticed other changes too. Marcus had bought 3 new suits in the past month. He'd started going to the gym regularly. His phone was always face down now, and he'd changed the password twice. I should have known, she whispered to her reflection, mascara tracks marking her cheeks. I should have seen it coming. The signs had been there. The mysterious credit card charges at restaurants she'd never been to. The late-night showers as soon as he got home. The way he'd stopped kissing her goodbye in the mornings, offering only a distracted pat on the shoulder instead. But it was the perfume that finally gave it away. 2 weeks ago, while doing laundry, she'd caught a whiff of something floral and expensive on his dress shirt collar. It wasn't the Body Shop vanilla she'd worn for years. This was different. This was Chanel. Now, staring at the text from an unknown number, Sarah felt her world tilting on its axis. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., she would meet the other woman. The owner of that expensive perfume. The reason for her husband's distance. The secret that had been eating away at their marriage. She didn't know it yet, but in less than 24 hours, she would be dead. Marcus Mitchell was across town when his wife read that text message. He sat in a dimly lit booth at the Bourbon House across from Jasmine Carter. At 28, Jasmine was everything Sarah wasn't. Young, ambitious, and unencumbered by the weight of a decade-long marriage. I told her, Jasmine said, pushing her seafood gumbo around with her spoon. I sent Sarah a text. We're meeting tomorrow. Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. You did what? She deserves to know, Marcus. This isn't fair to her, and you know it. Jasmine's dark eyes held a mixture of defiance and guilt. I can't keep being the other woman. Either you tell her about us, or I will. Marcus Mitchell had never considered himself a bad man. He'd grown up in a Baptist household in Metairie, gone to church every Sunday, and married his college sweetheart. He'd built a successful career selling luxury homes to New Orleans elite. He coached Little League on weekends. He remembered his mother's birthday and sent Christmas cards to his cousins. But 7 months ago, Jasmine had walked into his office looking to buy her first home, and something inside him had shifted. Her laugh reminded him of jazz music. Her ambition matched his own. When she touched his arm during house tours, electricity seemed to crackle between them. One showing led to coffee. Coffee led to dinner. Dinner led to stolen kisses in empty houses he was supposed to be selling. Before he knew it, he was living a double life, torn between the comfort of his marriage and the excitement of something new. I'll handle it, he told Jasmine now, reaching for her hand across the table. Just cancel the meeting with Sarah. Let me tell her myself. But Jasmine shook her head. You've been saying that for months. I'm done waiting. As she stood to leave, her Chanel perfume lingered in the air. Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. Everything he'd built, his reputation, his career, his life with Sarah, was about to come crashing down. He pulled out his phone and opened his recent calls. His finger hovered over a contact named Jerome, his cousin who'd done time for aggravated assault back in 15. He'd always sworn he'd never need Jerome's kind of help, but desperate times. Back at home, Sarah was making plans of her own. She'd called her best friend, Marie Thibodeau, and put her on speaker while she paced their master bedroom. Girl, you need to be careful. Marie's voice crackled through the phone. Remember what happened to Lisa Thompson when she confronted her man's side piece? Ended up with a black eye and her car keyed. I have to know, Marie. I have to look this woman in the face and hear the truth. Sarah ran her fingers over the framed photo on her nightstand, her and Marcus on their wedding day, both so young and full of hope. 12 years. 12 years I've given him, and this is what I get? You want me to come with you tomorrow? I can take a long lunch break. Sarah considered it, but shook her head even though Marie couldn't see her. No, I need to do this myself, but maybe stay on standby, just in case. Always, Chair. You call me if you need anything. After hanging up, Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, their bed, and let the memories wash over her. Their first apartment in mid-city, barely bigger than a closet, but filled with so much love. The day they'd bought this house, Marcus lifting her over the threshold like they were newlyweds again. All the quiet Sunday mornings reading the Times-Picayune together, sharing sections and stealing bites of each other's beignets. How had they gone from that to this? The next morning, it dawned hot and humid, typical for New Orleans in July. Sarah called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. She couldn't face 28 third graders while her life was falling apart. Marcus had come home late the previous night, long after she'd pretended to be asleep. She'd listened to his familiar routine, the shower running, his quiet footsteps, the soft thud of his clothes hitting the hamper. He'd slipped into bed without touching her, maintaining the invisible wall that had grown between them. Now at 10 a.m., she sat at their kitchen island, nursing her third cup of coffee and scrolling through his Instagram. There they were, all those perfect moments captured in filtered photos. Marcus at charity events, Marcus showing houses, Marcus at networking mixers. She paused on a photo from 2 months ago, a group shot at a real estate conference. Her husband stood in the back row, and next to him. Sarah's finger froze above the screen. The woman was stunning, tall, with smooth dark skin, and the kind of confidence that seemed to radiate through the photograph. The caption listed the names of everyone present, and Jasmine Carter, our newest agent. Jasmine Carter. Sarah committed the name to memory, feeling sick to her stomach. She clicked on Jasmine's profile but found it private. Still, the profile picture told her enough. The same woman, now smiling directly at the camera, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly salary. At his office, Marcus was coming undone. He'd already rescheduled 2 showings and snapped at his assistant over a minor scheduling error. His phone felt like a ticking bomb in his pocket. Every time it buzzed, he expected to see Sarah's name, imagined her telling him she knew everything. At noon, he couldn't take it anymore. He called Jasmine. "Where are you meeting her?" he demanded, pacing in the parking lot behind his office building. "I'm not telling you that," Jasmine replied coolly. "This is between me and her." "Damn it, Jasmine. You can't do this. You'll ruin everything. You ruined everything when you lied to both of us. I thought you were separated. I thought you were filing for divorce. Then I saw you and Sarah at that charity gala last week, looking like the perfect couple. Do you know how that made me feel?" Marcus ran a hand over his face. "Baby, please, just give me more time. I'll figure something out." "Time's up, Marcus. I'll see your wife at 2 p.m., whether you like it or not." The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, then made another call. This time to Jerome. "Cuz, I need a favor," he said when his cousin answered. "A big one, and it needs to stay between us." Across town, Sarah was getting ready for the confrontation. She'd changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a simple black dress that made her feel strong. Her hands shook as she applied her makeup, trying to cover the dark circles under her eyes. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marie. "You sure you don't want backup?" Sarah replied, "I'm sure, but if you don't hear from me by 3, call me." At 1:30 p.m., Sarah pulled into the parking lot of Café Beignet. The tourist crowds were thick, even for a weekday. Through the window, she could see people laughing over coffee and pastries, living their normal lives while hers was about to explode. She checked her makeup one last time in the rearview mirror. That's when she saw Marcus's black BMW pull into the lot. Her heart stopped. What was he doing here? Had Jasmine told him about the meeting? She watched as he parked a few spots away, his face set in a hard expression she'd never seen before. Inside the cafe, Jasmine Carter sat at a corner table, her red manicured nails tapping nervously against a water glass. She'd arrived early, wanting to choose a spot where she could see the door. Part of her still couldn't believe she was doing this. She thought about the first time she'd met Marcus, how charming he'd been during that initial house showing. How he'd mentioned his wife so casually, "We're separated, just trying to keep things civil until the divorce is final." She'd believed him, wanted to believe him. But last week at the charity gala, she'd watched from across the room as he danced with Sarah, his hand on the small of her back, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh. The sight had made Jasmine physically ill. She'd left early, gone home, and cried herself to sleep. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Sarah Mitchell walked in, looking both terrified and determined. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Then another chime. Marcus burst through the door, his face flushed with panic or anger or both. "Sarah, don't," he started to say, but Sarah was already halfway to Jasmine's table. The next few moments would play out in slow motion for everyone who witnessed them. Sarah reached Jasmine's table just as Marcus caught up to her. Jasmine stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Other customers turned to watch the drama unfold. "So you're the woman sleeping with my husband," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady. Jasmine lifted her chin. "I'm the woman your husband's been lying to, just like he's been lying to you." Marcus grabbed Sarah's arm. "Baby, let's take this outside." Sarah jerked away from him. "Don't touch me! Don't you dare touch me!" The cafe had gone silent except for the soft jazz playing through the speakers. Dozens of eyes watched as Sarah turned to face her husband. "How long?" she demanded. "How long have you been cheating on me? Sarah, please. How long?" Jasmine spoke up, her voice quiet but clear. 7 months, since he showed me that house on Esplanade Avenue." Sarah's laugh was hollow. 7 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip. While I was trying to figure out why you stopped wanting to touch me. 7 months of lies. Marcus's face had gone pale. His eyes darted between the two women, then toward the door. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Jerome, letting him know he was outside, waiting. "We need to talk about this at home," Marcus said, reaching for Sarah again. "Just us." But Sarah wasn't finished. She turned back to Jasmine. "Did he tell you he was separated? That's his favorite lie. He used it on Melissa from his gym 2 years ago. I found out about that one too, but I forgave him. Like an idiot, I forgave him." Jasmine's eyes widened. "What? There were others?" "Oh, honey," Sarah's voice dripped with bitter humor. "You're not special. You're just the latest." That's when Marcus snapped. Later, witnesses would describe seeing something change in his eyes, like a switch being flipped. He grabbed Sarah's arm again, harder this time. "We're leaving, now." "Get your hands off me." Sarah tried to pull away, but his grip was too tight. Jasmine stepped forward. "Marcus, stop! You're hurting her." But Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He started dragging Sarah toward the door, ignoring her struggles and the shocked gasps from other customers. A male patron stood up, moving to intervene, but Marcus shot him a look that made him freeze in place. Outside, the humid air hit them like a wall. Sarah was still fighting, screaming now, as Marcus pulled her toward his car. Jerome stepped out of the shadows of a nearby alley, watching silently. Jasmine ran out after them, her heels clicking on the pavement. "I'm calling the police." What happened next would be replayed in security footage and witness statements for months to come. Marcus shoved Sarah into his BMW's passenger seat. When Jasmine tried to stop him, Jerome emerged from the shadows, grabbing her and covering her mouth. The last thing anyone saw was Marcus's BMW peeling out of the parking lot, Sarah's screams cut off by the closing door, while Jasmine struggled in Jerome's grip. It was 2:17 p.m. By sunrise the next day, Sarah Mitchell would be found floating in Bayou St. John, and the city of New Orleans would have another tragic story to tell. The rest of that afternoon unfolded like a nightmare. Inside Marcus's speeding BMW, Sarah fought against her seatbelt as they swerved through traffic on Esplanade Avenue. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded, her voice hoarse from screaming. "Marcus, stop the car!" But Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched so tight she could see a muscle twitching. He didn't look like the man she'd married anymore. This was someone else, someone dangerous. You had to make a scene, he muttered, running a red light and earning angry honks from other drivers. You couldn't just leave it alone. Sarah's phone buzzed in her purse. Marie, probably wondering why she hadn't heard from her friend. But the purse was on the floor by her feet, and Marcus's wild driving made it impossible to reach for it. They drove past City Park, past the New Orleans Museum of Art, until the buildings began to thin out. Sarah recognized the route. They were heading toward the bayou, where they used to have picnics in the early days of their marriage. Marcus, please, she tried again, softer this time. Let's just talk about this. We can figure something out. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Figure something out? You just destroyed everything I've built. My reputation, my career. Who's going to want to buy houses from a man whose wife caused a scene about his affair in public? Your reputation? Sarah's fear began mixing with anger. You're worried about your reputation? You've been lying to me for years. Marcus suddenly swerved onto a narrow road that led to a secluded spot by the bayou. The tires crunched on gravel as he brought the car to a stop. The engine died, leaving them in silence, broken only by the distant sounds of traffic and the buzzing of cicadas. Get out, he said quietly. What? Get out. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for the door handle. The humidity hit her like a physical force as she stepped out. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the water. Marcus got out too, walking around to her side of the car. For a moment, they stood there, these two people who had once promised to love each other forever, now separated by an ocean of lies and betrayal. What are you going to do? Sarah asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Marcus moved closer. You know what's funny? I really did love you once, but you never understood ambition. You were content teaching bratty kids for pennies, living in our starter home forever. I needed more. So you decided to throw away 12 years of marriage? For what? A younger woman who strokes your ego? His hand shot out so fast she didn't see it coming. The slap echoed across the water, sending nearby birds scattering. Sarah stumbled backward, her hand going to her stinging cheek. Jasmine was just the beginning, he said, advancing on her. I had plans, big plans. The affair would have given me reason for divorce. I would have kept my image as the wronged husband who found love again, but you had to make it messy. Sarah backed away, her heels sinking into the soft ground near the water's edge. Marcus, you're scaring me. You should be scared. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a text from Jerome. Took care of the other one, she won't talk. Something in Marcus's expression made Sarah turn to run, but he was faster. His hands grabbed her shoulders, spinning her around to face him. They struggled, their feet sliding in the mud. Sarah screamed, but out here, no one would hear her. I'm sorry, Marcus whispered, and for a second she saw a flash of the man she'd married. Then his hands were around her throat. Sarah fought. She clawed at his arms, kicked at his legs, but Marcus was stronger. Black spots began dancing in her vision. Her lungs burned. The last thing she saw was the sunset reflecting off the bayou water, beautiful despite everything. When it was over, Marcus stood alone by the water's edge, breathing heavily. He looked down at his wife's body, at the dark marks on her throat, and felt nothing. He was surprised by how easy it had been, how quickly a life could be extinguished. With mechanical precision, he removed Sarah's jewelry, her wedding ring, the sapphire earrings he'd given her for their 10th anniversary, the thin gold chain her mother had left her, anything that might float. Then he rolled her body into the bayou, watching as it disappeared beneath the dark water. Back in his car, Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed 911. Please, he sobbed into the phone, his voice breaking perfectly. My wife is missing. We had a fight and she ran off. I can't find her anywhere. Please help me find my Sarah. Within hours, the New Orleans Police Department would launch a missing persons investigation. News vans would crowd their street. Friends and family would gather, holding candlelight vigils, while Marcus played the part of the distraught husband perfectly. But he hadn't counted on three things: the cafe's security cameras, a tourist's cell phone video of the confrontation, and Jasmine Carter's survival instinct. As the sun rose over New Orleans the next morning, a jogger on his regular route along Bayou St. John made a gruesome discovery. Sarah's body had drifted with the current, catching on some cypress knees near the water's edge. The jogger's 911 call would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel Marcus Mitchell's carefully constructed plan. Meanwhile, across town, Jasmine Carter sat in a police interview room, about her designer dress torn, makeup smeared, but very much alive. Jerome had underestimated her. When he tried to force her into his car, she'd fought back with everything she had, her car keys becoming a weapon, her self-defense classes finally paying off. She'd managed to escape, running into a nearby restaurant where the staff had called the police. "Start from the beginning," Detective Lisa Rodriguez said, placing a cup of coffee in front of Jasmine. "Tell me everything about Marcus Mitchell." As Jasmine began her story, Marcus was giving a performance of his own at the 3rd District Police Station. He sat in another interview room, his head in his hands, playing the role of worried husband perfectly. "We had a fight," he explained to Detective James Morton, his voice cracking. "She was upset about some rumors at my office. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She ran off, and I've been looking for her ever since." "Mr. Mitchell?" Detective Morton's voice was carefully neutral. "We have video footage from Café Beignet showing you forcibly removing your wife from the premises." Marcus's head snapped up. I was trying to protect her from making a scene. She wasn't thinking clearly. We also have statements from multiple witnesses, including Miss Jasmine Carter." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Jasmine? But Jerome said." "Jerome Williams? Your cousin?" Detective Morton laid out a photograph. "This Jerome?" Marcus fell silent, realizing his mistake too late. He hadn't known that Jerome, in a panic after Jasmine's escape, had already been picked up by NOPD and was singing like a bird to save himself. The investigation moved quickly after that. Sarah's body was recovered, the marks on her neck telling their own story. The autopsy would reveal water in her lungs, confirming she was alive when she entered the bayou. Security footage from businesses along Esplanade Avenue tracked Marcus's BMW as it drove toward the bayou. Cell phone records placed both his and Jerome's phones in the relevant locations at the crucial times. But it was the tourist's video that proved most damaging. A visitor from Texas had recorded the entire confrontation at Café Beignet on her phone, including Marcus's aggressive behavior and Sarah's visible fear. The video had already gone viral on social media, turning the case into a national sensation. The evidence mounted. DNA from skin found under Sarah's fingernails matched Marcus. Mud from the bayou was found in the trunk of his BMW. Cell phone records showed his calls to Jerome before, during, and after the murder. Sarah's missing jewelry was discovered in Marcus's office desk. And most damning of all, a series of text messages between Marcus and Jerome discussing plans to handle the situation. Within 48 hours of Sarah's body being discovered, Marcus Mitchell was charged with first-degree murder. The news hit New Orleans like a thunderbolt. Local media ran special reports featuring interviews with shocked neighbors and colleagues. "They seemed so perfect together," became a common refrain. Photos of Sarah and Marcus at various social events were splashed across newspapers and TV screens, their smiling faces now tainted by the knowledge of what lay beneath. Marie Thibodeau, consumed by guilt for not insisting on accompanying her friend to the cafe, became a vocal advocate for domestic violence awareness. She shared stories of the warning signs she'd missed, the times Sarah had hinted at problems but downplayed their severity. "I should have pushed harder," she told reporters through tears. "I should have made her tell me everything." Jasmine Carter cooperated fully with the investigation, providing detailed statements about her relationship with Marcus and the web of lies he'd woven. She learned she wasn't his first affair, just the latest in a pattern that stretched back years. The revelation devastated her. "He told me he loved me," she said during her police interview. "He said his marriage was over, that he was just waiting for the right time to leave. I believed every word." The case sparked conversations across the city about domestic violence, infidelity, and the facades people maintain in their public lives. Sarah's story became a cautionary tale, her death a rallying cry for change. In the Bywater neighborhood, their Craftsman house stood empty, yellow police tape fluttering in the breeze. Neighbors left flowers on the porch, roses, lilies, and Sarah's favorite sunflowers. Notes from her third-grade students appeared, filled with childish handwriting expressing confusion and grief. Marcus Mitchell's arrest photo showed a different man from the polished real estate agent everyone knew. Gone was the confident smile, replaced by hollow eyes and a haunted expression. His perfect life had crumbled in less than 48 hours. 1 year later, the Orleans Parish Criminal District Court was packed for Marcus Mitchell's sentencing. After a trial that lasted 3 weeks, the jury had taken less than 4 hours to find him guilty of first-degree murder. Sarah's parents sat in the front row, holding hands, their faces etched with the kind of grief that never fully heals. Behind them sat Marie, who had become their surrogate daughter over the past year, helping them pack up Sarah's belongings and sharing stories about their daughter's kindness and humor. Jasmine Carter was there too, sitting near the back. She'd spent the past year in therapy, working through her guilt and trauma. She'd left real estate, unable to face the memories, and was now running a nonprofit organization helping women escape abusive relationships. When Marcus was led into the courtroom in his orange jumpsuit, handcuffed and shackled, he barely resembled the man who had once charmed his way through New Orleans society. Prison had aged him, or perhaps it was the weight of his actions that bent his shoulders and dulled his eyes. Judge Patricia Montgomery, known for her measured approach to justice, looked down at Marcus from the bench. "Before I pronounce sentence, Mr. Mitchell, you have the right to make a statement. Do you wish to do so?" Marcus stood slowly, his chains rattling in the hushed courtroom. "Yes, Your Honor." He turned slightly, facing Sarah's parents, but not quite meeting their eyes. "I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about who I became. The truth is, I lost myself somewhere along the way. Success, money, status, I convinced myself these things mattered more than the woman who stood by me when I had nothing." He paused, swallowing hard. "I know words mean nothing now. I know I can't bring Sarah back, but I want her family to know that not a day goes by that I don't replay that afternoon, wishing I could change everything. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sarah's mother let out a quiet sob. Her father's face remained stone-like, unmoved by the apology. Judge Montgomery waited a moment before speaking. "Mr. Mitchell, you took the life of a woman who loved and trusted you. A woman who dedicated her life to teaching children, who by all accounts brought light and joy to everyone around her. You did this not in a moment of passion, but through calculated actions that showed a complete disregard for human life." She lifted her gavel. "The jury has found you guilty of first-degree murder. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The gavel struck with finality. As Marcus was led away, his cousin Jerome, who had pleaded guilty to attempted kidnapping and conspiracy charges in exchange for his testimony, watched from a separate holding area. He would serve 15 years for his role in the crime. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around Sarah's parents and Marie. Camera lights flashed as her father spoke. "Today's sentence doesn't bring our daughter back. Nothing can do that. But perhaps Sarah's story will help other women recognize the warning signs we all missed. If you're in a relationship that makes you feel afraid or small, please reach out for help. Don't let our daughter's death be in vain." Marie stepped forward, holding up a flyer. "We've established the Sarah Mitchell Foundation for Domestic Violence Prevention. We'll be working with schools and community organizations to educate people about healthy relationships and provide resources for those in need." Later that evening, as the sun set over the bayou, Jasmine Carter stood at the spot where Sarah had died. She laid a single sunflower on the bank, watching as the petals caught the fading light. "I'm sorry I didn't know sooner," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't see through him." The water moved slowly, carrying the flower downstream. Somewhere in the distance, a jazz band played, the music drifting across the water. A reminder that in New Orleans, life and death, joy and sorrow, always dance together. Sarah's third-grade classroom at Marie Couvent Elementary School remained a testament to her legacy. Her replacement, a young teacher named Angela, kept Sarah's reading corner intact, complete with the colorful pillows and inspiring quotes Sarah had painted on the walls. The students still talked about Miss Mitchell, remembering how she made learning fun and always had time to listen to their problems. The Craftsman house in the Bywater was eventually sold, the proceeds going to the foundation bearing Sarah's name. The new owners, a young couple with dreams of starting a family, planted a garden full of sunflowers in the front yard, a tribute to the woman whose story they had learned during the sale. Marcus Mitchell's BMW was auctioned off by the state, the funds also directed to domestic violence prevention programs. His real estate empire crumbled, his properties sold to pay legal fees and civil settlements. The man who had been so concerned with image and status would spend the rest of his life in a 6-by-8-foot cell, his designer suits replaced by prison orange, his ambitious plans reduced to daily counts and regulated meals. And in a small corner of Lafayette Cemetery No. 1, Sarah's headstone stood as a quiet reminder of a life cut short. The inscription read, "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, beloved daughter, teacher, friend. She taught us how to read, but more importantly, she taught us how to be kind." Below these words, etched in stone, was a small sunflower, forever in bloom, forever reaching toward the light.